Hello, I'm Richard O'Neill. I'm a storyteller, an author and a lyricist, and I was also born and brought up in a nomadic Romani gypsy family in the northeast of England. So for most of the early part of my life, I lived in a completely nomadic family. I lived in a caravan and we travelled around from place to place. So my mum and dad and extended family, they would make things and buy things and sell things, and that was pretty much my life. I grew up listening to English language, but also the Romani language. Lots of the older people spoke Romani. And it was just around about the time when we were changing from the old-fashioned wagons. We still kept our carts and our horses, but the actual wagons, the old-fashioned bow-top wagons, the nicely painted ones you see often in museums, they were really pretty much faded out. There was one or two older people who kept them. Most people had moved into having modern caravans and trucks and cars. So that was my life really, and growing up was wonderful because I got to hear all of the stories. And the stories for me are just absolutely wonderful things because my family would tell those stories that went back 200-300 years, and I always found them absolutely fascinating. When I went to school, I was about 5-year-old, I think, when I went to school, and noticed a huge difference between the people at school and my family. My family seemed to be a much more joyful type of people, and their emotions were much nearer the surface. So if things were bad, you'd know about it. If things were good, you'd know about it. And then at night time, sitting around a fire and hearing stories, but also the singing. And the singing was the most important thing, because I think when you're brought up with that singing, it's the most beautiful thing. And I remember that very vividly. And I can remember sort of creating a song about a year ago, actually, with some of those lyrics, some of those pictures that came in my mind and turned into lyrics. And it went like this, and it was, at the edge of the river, by the side of the road, the traveller man's first aboard. A baby's crying, rings out in the dark. His mother singing soothes his traveller heart. That's a lovely reminiscence, but I think we need to come into the present now. And when I say present, I actually mean the present time, but it's almost like a gift, because we today, and my wonderful, wonderful friend here today, we are in the Oldham Coliseum Theatre, this beautiful place with all of its history, and we're here for a very special purpose. We are here to talk about our lives, we're here to talk about our art, but we're also talking about the future. What we are going to do in Oldham as a couple of creatives in collaboration with the Oldham Coliseum Theatre. And I am very, very excited about today.
My name is Deuce. I come from southwest Hungary, from a town called Pécs. And I moved to the UK permanently 9 years ago. Yeah, I moved to Oldham 8 years ago, and I've been living here since then, as well as my extended family. We've got a big diaspora from Pécs living in Bolton as well. The majority of the Eastern European Roma are based here in the northwest, in the north of England, actually. The community that I come from is a very traditional community. We are called the Lovara and the Calderara. We are a mix of the Lovara and the Calderara. The Lovara are the horse dealers, and the Calderara are the coppersmith, right? So I'm one of those guys, as well as my wife and my children. And our group is scattered all over the world. You know, I call Oldham, for me, you know, for Roma, for all of us, I think, you know, there's been a lack of belonging. I think that's a lack of physical belonging to a physical space, right? I think that's very common with most of the gypsy groups. However, for me, having moved away from Hungary, I realized, right, that Pécs is actually very important to me, right? So I feel that I belong there. But throughout the years, I also developed this belonging sense here. And I think, you know, our neighbors and shopkeepers managed to help, because in the first 5 years, nobody would really smile at us, right? We needed to take time for people to realize that, you know, we pay the bills every day, right? You know, we're not getting caught in the shoplifting, because we don't do that, right? And then once people realize that you're actually a decent person, you got a job, you know, you get paid, you're paying your bills, then they start smiling at you. But it took 5 years to earn that smile.
So the other thing I think we need to do is we need to tell you a little bit more about ourselves. And I've got a few things on the table here that we'll be using a little bit later when we do our performance. But my name, as I said, is Richard O'Neill, and I think when Deuce was referring to generations, the different generations, he might have meant mine, because I'm quite old. But we're still here and I'm still doing stuff. I was born quite a long time ago. I was born in the 1960s and grew up in a traditional gypsy nomadic family. So we lived in caravans and we travelled around from place to place. And it was a really, really good life. And listening to the stories were amazing, but also listening to the music. One of the things that often used to happen at the end of a hard day's work would be this beautiful singing. And these songs would reflect the good times, the hard times, and just that wonderful spirit of our gypsy nomadic people. Just a couple of things here that I brought in today so we can show our audience a little bit later. And we take what is around us. You know, you've told me stories about your mum making soup and taking little bits from neighbours and then you all eating together. And of course, one of our jobs was making things out of wood, wooden spoons. So of course, you find that they become a percussion instrument. They're not just spoons, you know, you have this percussion instrument. And this is, I guess, one of our famous things. You know, we're quite famous for making clothes pegs. But clothes pegs are great. They keep your papers together. They're really, really good. Keep your clothes on the washing line. Nice way to make some money in the old days before we had plastic. And then we would just take bits of wood like this. And if you cut them in different sizes, you get different sounds.
Sounds awesome.
And percussion is really important because... And, you know, what we've been doing is we've been writing songs about our lives, really, and about Roma, Gypsy, Traveller, and trying to get them across to people, because I think sometimes in song lyrics you can get some pretty big things in a short time. And I was talking to you, and you were talking about travelling when you were growing up, and I think we do have this rhythm as Gypsy, Roma, Traveller people, in that, you know, whether it was the old horse-drawn wagons and carts that I used to go and ride on as a kid.
Yeah, shall we do a little bit of that?
Yeah. And then you just take the jug and do this. And then there's that song, isn't there, which was the rhythm of the road. So whether you're in a truck or on a horse, you get this of the tyres thudding along that, you know. And we had this little song, and yeah, you carry on, and we'll give it a go. We'll just give you a little bit. Lovely. And then we'll talk about influences because, and I'll sing that little bit of that, because that song that goes, it's the rhythm of the road. So that's it.
Rhythm of the road.
Rhythm of the road.
I just want to give you the two.
Oh, you can rhythm.
The rhythm of the road. The rhythm. My heart and soul. Rhythm. The rhythm of the road.
Many miles
So
behind us and
many miles to go.
Now, that I think is an illustration of not only our movement and the rhythm of the road, but I think also about our different influences, because I think a lot of influences with my music and my lyrics and our tunes are from the Celtic, are from Scottish, are from the Irish, are from the Welsh, which is our influences growing up. That's where we travelled. But with you, I think, coming from Eastern Europe, you've got many more influences, different ones.
Yes, I mean, my family particularly, you know, I grew up with Russian and Serbian Roma gypsy songs, which is not very typical in Hungary, right? We don't really represent the typical gypsy population in Hungary, my family. My family lives very scattered all over the world. None of us live in Yugoslavia or Russia. We've got some relatives in Russia as well, in Moscow actually. But most of our relatives live in Holland, Sweden, Denmark, and the United States.
Because I know what you do, and we can illustrate this as well, I think. Because our other song, which I think quite a lot of people like since we started doing it, we're still working on it, but I think they like it. And it's called Wheels on My Feet. And it starts off, and it's a little bit, I guess, sort of Celtic-y, sort of northern. But then you turn it into something else. Yeah? So I start off and I go, I was born with wheels on my feet. I was born to succeed, and I listen to my teachers, young and old. Yes, I listen to every story that they told.
I le 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 le, I le 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 le, I le 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 le, I le 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 le, I le 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 le, I le 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 le, I le 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 le, I le 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 le.
So we take that, and this is lovely fusion, I think. We're both Gypsy, we're both Romani, we're both Roma, and yet we come from these different sides, and we get this lovely stuff, and hopefully connects with lots and lots of different people. So we've been talking about different terminology, Roma, Gypsy, and Traveller. And those are really interesting terms, because I would class myself as both a Romani person and as a Gypsy person. And of course I was travelling when I was born. Now it's good to clarify these things, and I'll let you clarify Roma. But for me, Gypsy is a legal term, so that means somebody like myself who was born in England or born in Wales, who is a Gypsy person who has that long history of that Romani culture. And Gypsy became a legal term. Now, then we look at Irish travellers who are obviously from Ireland with that terminology, who are also a recognised ethnic group, as are Welsh travellers and Scottish travellers. So, but I do like the word Gypsy because, well, partly because it's in the lexicon of words, I think, to describe nomadic people like me. But I like that word because there are some positive connotations to it, and I think I really want to reclaim that. I think it's a nice word. I don't like the fact sometimes it's prefixed with not very nice words, but I think we've got to get that word out there, and hence why I think we should have this Gypsy Jam.
So the word Roma is our internal word. It is very similar to the word Romanian, but has nothing to do with it, right? Yeah. Romanians used to be our slave masters for 5 centuries, which only ended 160 years ago, right? And unfortunately, the situation of the Roma has not been tackled since then, since most of our people were freed in Romania. Another part of our group was hiding in the Carpathian Mountains for 5 centuries. Many of the Czech and Slovak, especially Eastern Slovakia Roma families that moved to Sheffield, for example, used to live in forests up to 2016. We made a film there, actually, for Channel 4, where we filmed people, in that forest.
You see, it's not been a very good history in the UK either. So going back to 1530, when King Henry VIII came out with this thing called the Egyptians Act, who wanted to banish all gypsies in the country, or Egyptians as he called them at the time. And then we had slavery. Gypsies were enslaved in England, and they were also deported, so they were sent to places like Barbados. They had shipping going backwards and forwards, and they were sent there. But the last word, I think, on where we come from, because this is something we're going to explore with Gypsy Jam, I think, in bigger ways. But I'll leave the last word to my great uncle William, or Billy as he was called. And I once said to him, because I've been reading something about the history, I'm about 7 or 8 at the time. I was a big reader, a real bookhead, sort of my head in a book. And I said to him, where do we come from, Uncle William? And he said, only the Lord knows that, and he's too high and mighty to tell the likes of us. And that was the answer, and that was me dismissed. So I'm really keen to find out as much as possible. I think what we've talked about so far really highlights the fact that no matter where we come from as Gypsy or Roma people, we are united by that culture. That culture transcends time, it transcends geography, doesn't it? And that's really important, and we can still see that in our communities in the UK.
I mean, you guys have been living in the UK for 5 centuries, right? And we came, most of us, 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, the earliest. from Eastern Europe. But I see our plight, our destiny as the same. I mean, you were saying before that you guys have been enslaved, just like us, right? And besides the language, I think what really unites us, all the gypsies in the world, is our perspective of life.
For me, it's about being circular rather than linear. People often say to me, they say, what's the difference between nomadic people, and these are nomadic people from all over the world, but specifically gypsy nomadic people, what's the difference between nomadic people and settled people? And I think it's our perspective in that we are circular in thinking rather than linear. So life is to be lived and to be enjoyed in a circular fashion rather than you start here and you get there as quick as you can.
I think that is a very good explanation, Richard. And another thing is that because of the long-lasting slavery, persecution, discrimination, segregation, and mockery we've been going through, this perspective of life has become about surviving, right? But we've never had a space to develop a collective identity, right? We've not gone through the nationalization process like other nation states have, for example. We've never fought a war, right? You were saying earlier today
no army.
that Roma never had an army, right? And we never wanted to occupy any land, and we are not planning to either.
So, yeah, all of those things, those connections. And I think we want to bring that culture out in our work through our songs, through our spoken word, but also through our drama. Because that's one of the things that, and I know this for a fact, because working with the independent theatre company in Hungary, who do an amazing job, we need more of that in the UK. And just to be in this wonderful theatre today, I mean, wow, how good is this, you know? And I speak as a much older person than you, and I'm talking about, you know, being a kid and maybe going to a theatre for the first time, maybe with school when I was about 9 or something. And here I am, you know, half a century later, and we're on the stage.
So I'm hoping, you know, that here in Oldham we can start building this collective identity through cultural activities and cultural programs, through music in the first place, and creating maybe a piece on stage. Just imagine, you know, that there is a Roma theme. The Roma theme has not been part of arts and culture. The Roma theme is very scarcely being addressed by artists.
And I think what I hope that this project, the first of many with the Gypsy Jam sessions, will do is to provide an opportunity for Roma people of all ages, because we're not saying it's just about young people, it's because we as Roma people are intergenerational. So the older people will sit down with the younger people and everybody in between. So we want to be able to allow people, whatever age they are, to express themselves through music, through song, through spoken word, through drama.
I'm really hoping that the Gypsy Jam sessions are going to encourage Eastern European Roma here in Oldham as well to dare to dream, to bring those dreams forwards and help people achieve those, work towards those dreams and achieve their dreams.
I think that's one of the things that we want to do with this project and going forward, is to show the positives of Romani Gypsy Traveller communities, but also bring some joy. You know, bring some joy to the world. I think our music does, our songs do, our stories do.
Come on. Let's do one then, huh?
Okay, which one do you want to do? Okay.
It's about Richard the Storyteller, right? So the Storyteller in Romani Gypsy is Paramiciari, right? So this is an old song, actually, from a band called Kali Yag, which means black fire, right? They were the very first band in the world to release an album in Romani Gypsy language, fully Romani Gypsy language, and all songs were folk songs, right? Gathered by ethnographers, some of the most famous ethnographers in Eastern Europe. And this song is a very, very popular one. I've got a pipe and a gypsy hat. By a scrapyard, I was born and bred. These are the first two lines, right? Okay. I got a pipe, a gypsy hat. By a scrapyard, I was born and bred. Where do I live? How can they tell that? There is brick dust on my gypsy hat. Yeah, something like that, okay. Aloma, loma, loma, teddy, 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 aloma, loma, loma, teddy, aloma, lom, So Richard, I've got a song for you that I want to teach you. You remember when we first met?
Yeah.
For the second meeting, you wrote a song about me.
I did.
Right?
I did.
So I was thinking I should also write a song about you.
Okay.
Right? But
Are
I
you going
also
to teach it to me?
Yes,
Not
I'm
just
going-
expect me to do it straight off.
all right. Let's do that then. I'm going to teach you that song.
In stages. You know how slow I am learning new stuff.
Oh, you are very good. Come on, Richard. So let me just tell you one thing. This song is actually a folk song, right? A Romani gypsy folk song from Eastern Europe.
Okay.
And a band called Kaliag, the Black Fire, is the one who sang it first back in 1989. They were the first band to release an album in Romani gypsy language. I'll show you the original version first,
Oh, okay.
so people watching this can recognize the song,
Okay.
and you can find it on YouTube as well.
And this is in Romani.
Partly in Hungarian and
Oh,
Romani.
wow.
So I was thinking that we could put English lyrics in the place of the Hungarian words, right?
Perfect.
So
Yes.
that would be the plan, right?
Yes, good.
So the first though, the Hungarian bit goes like this. Van egy pipám egy kalapon, én a téglagyárban lakom, taradatej, taradatej, taradadada, onnan tudják, hogy ott lakom, taradadana, téglaporos a kalapon. So how does that go?
That sounded beautiful, by the way.
Oh, all right. Okay, I'm glad you like it,
I
Richard.
love
I'm
it,
glad
I
you like
love
it. So in English, this would look like somehow like this. I got a pipe, a gypsy hat. Oh, we've got the gypsy hat on the table. Look at that.
Better
He
put it
does
on.
have a gypsy hat. I didn't
it
know
on,
he would
put it
bring
on.
his hat, but he does have one, right? By a scrapyard I was born and bred. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Is that true?
Well, do you know, that's really interesting because I did live, when I was younger, I was about 5-year-old, I did live in my caravan right next door to a scrapyard.
Oh my God, all right, then so I'm following
It was
truth
noisy
here.
and dirty.
Oh,
And
right.
my poor old mum had to try and keep all our clothes clean amongst all of that.
So she was having a hard time doing that, right?
Never complained though.
All right, then. So that's something actually what the third line is talking about, because in school, you know, many of the gypsy kids in Eastern Europe were discriminated because we're in dirty clothes. Unfortunately, we didn't have the facilities to keep our clothes clean. And that was always an issue. So, but how can people know? So where do I live? How do they know that? Is the next line, right? Where do I live? How do they know that? Da, 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 da. There is brick dust on my gypsy hat. So let's try and sing it then as one verse, yeah?
This is the first time I've seen this, so
Yeah.
yes, I've got it written down as well. That's good.
So this is it, right? Let's just show handwritten, yeah? Very fresh from the furnace. Okay.
Okay.
I got a pipe, a gypsy hat. And then one thing we do when we sing, when you finish the word, then you decorate it with la 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 la.
Oh,
right?
go on,
That's
then.
what you
So
do,
what
right?
kind of la la la?
Yeah, so this one could.
Very pretty. All right.
All right.
Yeah. Go.
I got a pipe, a gypsy hat. By a scrapyard I was born and bred. Where do I live? How do they know that? There is brick dust on my gypsy hat. Somebody, up. Shall we do it one more time?
Oh, absolutely. I'm getting
Okay.
into this. It's fast becoming my favourite.
I got a pipe, a gypsy hat. Trouble. Ja. By a scrapyard I was born and bred. Where do I live? How do they know that? There is brick dust on my gypsy hat.
we are, as storytellers, a human television set. And that's what they were. We didn't need a telly. You sit there and you
Absolutely
just watch
right.
this person. And as you say, they'd be doing the noises, doing the actions, doing everything. They wouldn't think of it as drama. They wouldn't think of it as a performance or getting paid for it. It was just something they did in the community. And that's, I think, we've got this huge talent pool in our communities that hopefully this Oldham Coliseum Theatre is a portal to which they can step through. And that's going to be absolutely amazing.
We're going to make it rock.